I was on shift when I got the call something about unauthorized construction equipment rolling across private land near the East Ridge. The dispatcher didn't think much of it at first, just another zoning complaint. But when I heard the address, my heart stopped. That wasn't just any land. That was my family's ranch, 120 acres passed down 3 generations, and the heart of everything we've built. I raced out there, still in uniform, and couldn't believe what I saw. A bulldozer was cutting right through my fence line, tearing up pasture like it was nothing. And standing beside it, arms crossed and grinning like he owned the world, none other than Greg Hastings, the HOA president from the nearby subdivision. Now Greg's had a reputation for being power-hungry, but this was insane. He didn't even flinch when he saw me. "Just cleaning up abandoned property," he said. I told him flat out he was trespassing, and he laughed. "We voted on it. It's being rezoned. You'll get your notice next week." What Greg didn't know, and what was about to change everything, is that I'm not just a landowner. I'm also the county police chief. That's when everything shifted. His smile disappeared the second he saw my badge. But the damage was already done, and trust me, there were consequences. Big ones. You're not going to believe how far Greg went, or how fast things unraveled once I took off the gloves. Stick around, because this story's just getting started. Greg's smirk faded fast when I stepped out of the truck and walked straight toward him in uniform. He tried to play it off like he didn't know who I was, but that didn't last long. I've been the county police chief for nearly 8 years, and my name's on more than a few of the permits around here, including the one that proves my ranch is fully registered and protected. I looked past him at the bulldozer operator, who had already shut the engine off and was staring down at the ground like he wanted to disappear. That machine had torn straight through my fence, flattened a section of native grass we've been restoring, and pushed dirt up onto land that wasn't just private, it was off limits to the HOA by state code. Greg clearly didn't care about any of that. He muttered something about reclaiming underutilized land for a walking trail and trying to beautify the community. Problem is, my ranch isn't in their community. It's right outside their boundary line, technically in the unincorporated county zone, which the HOA has zero authority over. But Greg had gone ahead anyway. He'd even filed a phony complaint to the county office days earlier, claiming my land was abandoned, despite the barn, livestock, and security cameras clearly in place. Someone had been trying to push this for a while, and Greg wasn't acting alone. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a setup, and it was about to come crashing down. I started asking questions on the spot, not just as the landowner, but as the county police chief. Greg shifted uncomfortably and claimed he had HOA board approval, but couldn't produce a single permit or legal document. What he did have, though, was a copy of a rezoning proposal stamped, not approved, something that looked like it had been yanked out of a planning meeting and pushed ahead without proper clearance. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my ranch. This was bigger. Word started to spread quick. My neighbor Dave, who runs cattle up on the north edge of the ridge, called me that afternoon and said a developer's rep had been poking around his place too, asking weird questions about water rights and fencing boundaries. Another landowner down the road had just filed a formal complaint about mysterious survey flags showing up on his property overnight. One by one, it all started connecting. It looked like Greg and a few others from the HOA had been quietly working with an outside development for trying to grab adjacent land under the table, using their positions to push false reports and manipulate zoning paperwork and my ranch. It just happened to be the first real test. The bulldozer wasn't the end goal, it was the opening move. And from the looks of it, they thought they could steamroll the process and scare folks into giving up their land. What they didn't count on was picking the wrong person to bulldoze first. That evening, I sat in my office, flipping through every zoning file I could get my hands on. What I found confirmed my gut. Multiple reports had been edited after submission. Documents were time-stamped, but unsigned. Survey flags on private land with no legal record. Someone inside the county planning office was either getting sloppy or getting paid. Meanwhile, Greg was doubling down. The HOA released a statement claiming the clearing of my land was part of a larger community beautification plan. They even posted pictures carefully cropped to hide the bulldozed fencing and livestock gate. But the locals weren't buying it. Ranchers, farmers, and even longtime homeowners started speaking up. And every story was the same: surprise visits, vague threats, and suddenly land that had been untouched for generations was being reviewed for development. I kept my badge out of it for now. I wanted to be sure, not just right, but pressure was building fast. Greg was still playing innocent, hiding behind the HOA board, and this so-called developer hadn't shown their face once. Just paperwork, signatures that didn't match, and surveyors who stopped answering questions the moment I mentioned law enforcement. Then a tip came in from someone. Anonymous, just a scanned lease agreement with one familiar name buried in the fine print. That's when it all clicked. Greg wasn't just pushing land for trails and trees. He had financial ties to the company, trying to buy it all out. And the trail. It led straight back to the HOA office. The lease agreement I received wasn't just shady, it was explosive. Buried deep in the terms was a clause that referenced pre-cleared land acquisitions, connected to a shell company registered in another state. But what really caught my eye was the signatory. It wasn't Greg. It was someone from inside the county planning office, a junior clerk I'd met once. Quiet, barely noticeable. And she just happened to be married to Greg's cousin. That changed everything. This wasn't just an HOA power trip anymore. This was coordinated. Greg had been working a slow takeover, getting inside help to push fake zoning changes, planting false reports, and faking land abandonment notices. And somehow, they'd managed to file paperwork that made it look like multiple ranches, including mine, were up for redevelopment. What's worse, the developer wasn't just speculating. It already secured investors and submitted early site plans under the radar. I couldn't believe how far it had gone, just when I thought I had the full picture. Another twist hit hard. The anonymous tipster sent one more document, a private email thread between Greg and someone only listed as Mr. They weren't just planning to sell the land. They were trying to push for eminent domain using falsified environmental hazard reports. And guess whose ranch was listed first as unfit for agricultural use? That's when I realized, this wasn't just about land or money anymore. Someone was trying to erase everything we'd built, and they were doing it through the very laws I'd sworn to uphold. I had everything I needed. I called a special meeting with the county commissioners, brought the full file mails maps, phony reports, and that lease agreement. I laid it all out under oath, with a room full of officials who were just as shocked as I was. Greg tried to spin it, claiming it was all miscommunication, but it was too late. The clerk involved had already been suspended, pending investigation, and when she was questioned, she spilled the rest. Turns out, Mr. was a local environmental consultant hired to create bogus hazard assessments. They'd marked several ranches as unsafe, including mine, just to trigger legal action for forced clearance. And Greg, he was already set to receive a massive payout once the deals went through. The county immediately froze all pending land reviews, launched an internal audit, and revoked the developer's preliminary agreements. Greg was removed as HOA president within 24 hours, escorted out during an emergency board vote. But the final twist, that anonymous tipster who started it all was Dave, my neighbor. He'd overheard Greg talking with a rep near the fence line and recorded everything. He wasn't just protecting his own land, he'd risked a lot to make sure they didn't get away with it. So yeah, Greg bulldozed my ranch. But in doing so, he bulldozed straight into the law. Now the land's safe. The lies are out in the open, and the people who tried to steal it all, they're the ones facing the consequences. After everything settled, finally had a moment to breathe and look out over the land that almost got stolen. The broken fence was still there, a reminder of how close we came to losing it all, not from disaster, but from people who thought they could manipulate the system without anyone noticing. But they underestimated this community, and they definitely underestimated the guy who just happens to wear the badge in this county. The county planning office cleaned house. New checks were put in place. Several HOA board members resigned, quietly trying to distance themselves from Greg's mess. As for Greg, last I heard, he was tied up in legal hearings and civil suits, not just from me, but from several neighbors whose land he tried to claim. That little web of fake documents and secret deals unraveled fast once the truth came out. Dave and I put up a new gate between our ranches, stronger this time. We laugh about how we never thought a pasture line would become ground zero for a zoning scandal.